imagine a stream. Okay, there's a bunch of logs in the way. All you got to do is take those logs out, and then the stream flows. So that's all you have to do. You don't have to create grief. There's just grief inside of you that's blocking the flow. So you just have to take an inventory and actually be able to see what's going on. And it's extremely difficult to see what's going on. That's why we have certain practices. All you got to do is remove those, and automatically the water flows. If you focus too much on taking the obstacles away and don't enjoy the water flowing, then your ability to take away the obstacles diminishes.
You're listening to another episode of Success with Purpose, where we hold conversations with the most holistically successful people we have the opportunity to connect with. We explore their journeys, their life-changing events, their perspectives, their mindset, and most importantly, their purpose. I'm Harry Goldberg, host, interviewer, and interrogator of this podcast. Father of the most incredible daughter in the world, husband of an incredible woman, and director and empowerment coach at Purpose Advisory. Hope you enjoy this episode, and don't forget to subscribe and like below. Now, let's begin. So welcome, Jai, to this episode of the podcast, where we're focused on how to live a successful life in a more holistic sense. And so to everyone who's listening, Jai is one of those incredible people that you managed to somehow connect with in life. Started out living a kind of normal, typical, frustrated American existence, I guess you could say. GFC happened, and then went spiraling into trying to identify what the purpose of life is. And then this whole spiritual path, ended up being a monk for 10 years, and now back in the real world with a home and a wife and a dog and a white picket fence and a so-called normal job, and reading books that normal people read, and a whole lot happier for it as well. So Jai, awesome to have you here.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure.
Cool. Maybe to start off, I'm just curious, how would you define success?
Being happy in all areas, and having the confidence where you know that your desires can be fulfilled at a deep level.
Okay, so success in all areas, and then the happiness in all areas, and then the depth of fulfillment in those as well.
Well, I guess happiness and fulfillment you may define as the same thing. A deep sense of happiness, but not just in one area, all of life. Which isn't based in the specifics of the areas, but also a confidence that the desires that come forth from a deep, genuine place can be fulfilled.
What's that depth that you're referring to? Because that's the first time I've heard anyone talk about success in terms of the depth in each of the areas. What does that look like?
For me, it's like the feeling core of every subject in life. Whether it be relationship, career, it brings a happiness that's not a happiness that's more surface, like I'm having pizza this Friday, but more something the deepest part of you that you can feel into yourself, basically.
I'm really looking forward to exploring that. And I think for the benefit of everyone else who's watching in or listening in, maybe you want to share your journey back from where it all started, where I know 2 name changes before where you are today.
Sure. Yeah, I can give it all in a nutshell. Basically just, grew up a normal kid. Then parents got into a little bit of a financial issues, like late high school. And so because of that, I decided I wanted to, make a ton of money. And so then started my own businesses, and then all of that collapsed. And then at one of my most rock bottom moments, I had what you can say a spiritual experience. Up until that point, I believed I could only be happy if I got the money I wanted, I got the possessions I wanted, I got the relationship I wanted. I tied being happy to achieving things in life. It's impossible to be happy unless I have this XYZ. So up until that point, I had no idea what happiness really was. Then I had this experience where literally the worst time of my life, where if you were to look at it.
Can you describe the experience of your life or the story of your life, kind of like for the few months up until that point? What did that look like?
Well, I had a business with investors and basically lost everything.
Okay.
So I went from, owning my own business, being my own boss, doing my own thing, living pretty comfortably. I was in my early 20s, so 21 or 22, to, having to be a waiter to make ends meet, and and losing status and all that good stuff. So yeah, nothing. I didn't do anything in particular. It was a spontaneous thing that happened. So I was just driving in my car, and then all of a sudden, the best way I can describe it is a giant vacuum sucked out all my bad feelings, and in its place came this giant avalanche of just amazingness. I mean, I really don't have any words to describe it. Just like bliss, just pure awesomeness. And I was driving, and it was so kind of overwhelming. I started laughing hysterically, so much so I started getting so lightheaded I had to pull over. And I just continued laughing, mainly laughing because I realized how silly it was that like my mind was holding itself apart from this for really stupid reasons, like just made up nonsense. And that this thing that I was feeling was always available. I just wasn't allowing myself to have it flow into me. I don't know how long I stayed there laughing. It could have been 20, 30 minutes. I really have no idea. But at that point, for maybe 2 weeks, I was just, you had to tie rocks to my feet. I was just in bliss. And weird things started happening. Like coincidences where like the right person was right there at the right time to do something, or I was there for them. Disharmony with my roommate at the time completely disappeared. We had like an issue of doing the dishes, and that totally disappeared. And I had no idea what happened. It was I was very much the witness of it all. And what interested me the most was the effects that this had, but more so, what fascinated me was that happiness had nothing to do with me getting a car that I wanted, getting the relationship that I wanted, getting anything. It was something that we could tap into even at your worst. And so I wanted to explore this. It was just, it was a total, broke my mind, total game changer on how to view life. So then I started reading books from the East. I'm not sure why. I went to Barnes and Noble. I walked in and there was a giant sign that said spirituality. I'm like, looks pretty cool. I go over there and started reading books like Ramana Maharishi, Nisargadatta Maharaj, books from the East. And they were describing these things. And and I kind of understood what they were talking about. I'm like, oh my God. And at that point, by the way, religion I thought was for um, people who weren't educated. I thought, science was the best thing ever. I mean, I love science still, but I thought like, religion was things of the past, before, pre-science. And I didn't even know Hinduism was a religion at that point. Just pure ignorance when it comes to religion and spirituality. Was not at all on my mind at all before any of this. So then, yeah, one thing led to another, and I knew that I wanted to dedicate myself to this, to explore it deeper. Because what excited me the most too was knowing that this was could be just the beginning, and there could be so much more. It's like basically a whole world that was untapped and for me to start exploring. So that was really exciting. So then I decided I wanted to dedicate myself to this, so to become a monk. And then I just went to different monasteries and picked the one in Hawaii.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know if that answers your question, but
no, it's a hell of a journey, right? Just to go from running your own business or your business with a few other people, believing that science is everything, that religion's completely outdated, spirituality is something of the past, and it's just a bunch of woo-woo for idiots, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And then just realizing that, hang on, this is something that's within us. It's existed for thousands of years, and it's still with us right now today. And my guess is that one of the key thoughts you had after that kind of bliss or nirvana kind of started wearing off after a few weeks was, how can I get that back? How can I have more of that?
Yes, that was one of the things. And there were lots of answers to that. One was that can be a trap to connecting to that, wanting to get back to something from the past that you thought was better. But yeah, that was definitely a thought I had.
Okay, so you started reading a whole bunch of books, and then you eventually found your way towards a temple in Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
And what next? What was that journey?
That was intense. That was very intense. So entrance is pretty methodical and long. You have to go through many months of living with the monks, and then about 6 months, and then you go home. Then you can come back. Then you take like a 6-month pledge. And then like all debts have to be settled. All affairs in the world have to be settled. There's also very strict rules on if you can become a monk or not. You have to be less than 25 years old. You can never have been married, et cetera, et cetera. So I qualified at that point. But there were like student loans, because I had some college I was taking at the time, college classes, and little odds and ends to tie up. And so I had to go back, take care of all those, and then go back to the monastery. And then it was like a year roughly of training before I started taking vows. And there's a lot of training. I had to beg by the wall for 7+ days to gain entrance. So you basically, in the morning, you sit there by the wall of the monastery, and you either do a certain type of meditation or you chant, and you stay there until a senior monk comes and relieves you. That could be 2 hours, it could be 4 hours, it could be 6 hours, it could be 8 hours, who knows. And he did that for 7+ days. I don't quite remember exactly how long it is, but it's definitely more than a week. So there's a lot of stuff you need to do before, getting in. But it was truly just the beginning. What I experienced was just the beginning. And the routines that and the disciplines that like build the framework of the monastery is really nice. That's one of the things that at that point I struggled with was like discipline. And when you go into the monastery, you really have no choice but to be disciplined, because that's how the whole structure of the place is. So I really learned the value of discipline. And meditation was really the vehicle of connecting that that I used, and that was taught in the monastery.
Okay, so you went there, you made a 6-month pledge, and they basically started teaching you meditation, or were they just saying sit down and stop thinking?
Yeah, there were classes every day. I went as part of the routine. What it was, you wake up 4:30. You have to be in the temple by, I believe it was 5. And then there's a temple worship ceremony for about 30-45 minutes. Then after that, there's a meditation for like about an hour and a half. And then there's classes after that. And then it's work day, basically. And then sometimes there were classes in the evening as well. But it was a big mix of, what you would think of spirituality, meditating, that, and working, like taking care of cows, building sheds, chop wood, carry water, sort of thing.
Okay. So you mentioned pledges and then you mentioned vows. What's the difference?
Mm-hmm. So a pledge, it's a bit less severe if you break, sort of thing. It's also more short term. So vows are much more serious, and they're for longer. So they were for 2 years at a time, until they give you lifetime vows. And one of the reasons I left was lifetime vows was about to come for me, and I decided not to take them.
Okay, so what? So there's a big kind of like 9-year gap in that story. Yeah. So what happened from when you took your first vow? I think you said about 1 year in, mm-hmm. And then you were a monk, like a proper qualified, certified, whatever it is, recognized monk, for another 9 years. What happened during that time? What were you doing?
So basically that same routine, every day. There were days we had off, but basically almost every day. So much happened. One of the things we say is in the monastery, 1 year in the monastery is like 6 years out in the world. And the reason for that is, think of all the experiences you've had, all the emotional journeys, all the emotional processing you've had to do over a whole year's worth of time. Now, pretend you had to do all of that in about a couple of weeks. That's how it's like being in the monastery. It's a pressure cooker. It's a accelerator of internal experience, to where unresolved vibrations inside of you come up at a very high rate, much higher than if you weren't there. And life experience needs to be processed more. You would never notice for looking from the outside in, because you think, he's a monk doing a routine. But these things you experience with the spiritual disciplines is it's unspeakable, the power it has to bring up everything inside of you that you hide from yourself, basically. Also called the unconscious.
Okay, so like I'm thinking in terms of applying that to my life or finding a metaphor for that. When I started meditation, I remember I'd sit down for 20 minutes and I'd have a timer on my phone and the timer on my watch, and I'd have everything off. And then I'll be like, wow, this is taking forever. Am I sure I've got that timer on? And I go and quickly check. Like, yeah, I've definitely got it. I'm 2 minutes in. This is nuts. And then I remember thinking, how much life would that be? How much more life would someone experience when they're constantly in a state of meditation and mindfulness? And then you think about these monks who have 20 or 30,000 hours of meditation experience. How much more life would they have experienced than the average Joe who does 10 or 20 minutes of meditation, if that, a day? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I think so. The interesting thing is we meditated as a group in a very specific language that the founder of the monastery created called Shun. And it's a language of meditation. So concepts that would take maybe like a paragraph of English to explain is all explained in one word. So it has different vocabulary. But when you're meditating with a group, especially in the beginning, like the group helps the individual, helps you, because a whole like hour and a half of having to be perfectly still and deeply meditate, doing that by myself would have been so much harder. Like the group helps you with that. So in meditation, first was a lot of trash. Things that would come up. I mentioned that I was blissful for 2 weeks, after the experience I had. And it would go from being blissful to the worst pain I could feel. And I would have, this is when I first started meditating and becoming a monk, after I took vows. I would have crazy, weird nightmares where like ankles would be, like people's feet would be ripped off. Just like crazy, violent, terrible nightmares. All this stuff came up. That was probably for a good 8 months to a year, roughly.
Did you write those down and then create a script for the next Saw? Or
a lot of good movies in there, yeah.
Where was that stuff coming from? Just like that crazy imagination of yours?
So it's like two things. One, personal, deep unconscious vibrations, and the images that I would see and that my mind would create were just its interpretations of those, but also collective human things, things from past lives, the whole gambit. Anything you can experience as a human comes to the surface. There's so much that you don't see inside of you. It's ridiculous. Like we can't, basically almost nothing. We see like 1 unit of information for billions of units of information that are just hidden from us. So when you meditate, unresolved and disharmonious vibrations come to the surface. And so that's what that was. It was an upheaval process. You can call it dark night of the soul. I know some traditions call it that as well. But that was my first sort of deep, dark path through hell. You can call it inner hell. But breaking through that, through all that, was a flow and a purity and a happiness that's permanent, that nobody can take away. And you can meet with the guru there, and when something like this happens, that's why routine is so important and discipline is so important, because no matter what you're going through, you just follow the routine, follow the disciplines, and time will take care of the rest. So then breaking through that, then every time in meditation, instead of fearing, not really fearing, but instead of expecting, more pain to come up, I would be connected to more joy. And then that would, similarly to how my first experience, after a couple of weeks, it went away. When I first tapped into it in meditation, it'd last till like 8 or 9 p.m. till like after breakfast. Then it got a little bit longer. Then it got a little bit longer until finally, this is years, maybe 2-3 years of meditation. I would be connected to bliss from one meditation to the next, and it would be unbroken. And that's when meditation really took off. That's when things really accelerated, kind of exponentially. An interesting thing I noticed during all that is we had several like travels to different countries, like spiritual groups and like travel studies we would do with the devotees of the temple. And there were 2 of them during that period, during the beginning periods of my meditation. The first time, everyone's like energy would affect me. Like there were crowds of people, someone was upset for some reason or another, I would feel it. The next one, I'd feel it much, much, much less. I would see people get upset of certain things or certain situations happen. And I wasn't separate from it. I was definitely there, but emotionally bothered was like super far away. Then the last one we had, it's like nothing, people's energy, groups, whatever, nothing could affect me. And that was really like an objective way for me to kind of see sort of the progress that I was making and like the effects that the meditation had, because it was something at that point, at the end, towards the end, it was something that was part of me. Like nothing could take it away.
So what you're referring to is that you'd have people around you, a lot of people kind of in pilgrims coming up to you, trying to hope that you can ease their pain. So obviously they're in a lot of suffering, and
yes,
coming to you was the way that they'll be able to escape this pain.
Correct.
And so they were like really reliant on you and dependent on you to be able to ease their pain, or at least from their perspective.
Correct. Yeah. Especially the culture is, Western culture, they would come to you very differently than someone from, like India or Sri Lanka. Like they would come there and like touch your feet, and like worship you basically. Like, bless my baby sort of thing. And I'm like, whoa, what? Like, I'm just a regular guy here, like I'm not a saint or anything. But they, it's part of their culture, and they really, truly believe that. And, they do get a benefit from that. So it's almost like a completely different planet as far as culture. That I jumped into. So they would come to you and, pour out everything, all of, you can imagine. Basically, everything that I tapped into during the beginning of meditation, basically through hell, other people would come to you with their own version of that. And so in the beginning, that affected me big time. It'd take me time to recover. And then it got less and less and less and less.
Is that because there were still things within you that you hadn't released yet?
Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
Okay. So even before you came back to society where success is such a big thing, you literally had people coming to you trying to touch your feet to bless their babies as if you were like the most successful person that they could get their hands on.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
What
there was a status element that that took me by surprise, and that I didn't quite like, to be honest. I saw some people fall into the trap of that. Like some monks, not particularly from our order, but other orders, because we would meet sometimes in our travels, monks from other orders. Over the years, they would fall into that trap of thinking they were better than others, and it's subtle. It's not going to scream in your face like anger does. But it was something that I knew that I had to be careful of.
There's no real way to test your ego except for people thinking that you're God, right?
there you go. When we went to Sri Lanka, there were literally hundreds or maybe even thousands of people coming to get our blessings, basically. And I was, a low monk on the totem pole, like the guru of the monastery. We had to like blockade people from getting to him. But yeah, it was something that I knew was you could easily fall into that trap.
Okay. So falling into that trap would be an example of someone who's lived a slightly less successful life, in your view?
Well, let's just say that it stunts their own spiritual growth and makes it stagnant and stale, just flatline. While everything on the outside is pretty enough for you to enjoy, but your actual spiritual progress it stops.
Okay, so spiritual growth is a key part of continued success, right?
Yes, the way I identify it. Yes.
Okay. So that's the story where you started going out to other places, and that's where you were like the low monk on the totem pole, right? What happened when you started moving up the ranks a bit?
Yep, you started moving the ranks. Your robes change colors. You have different disciplines. What's interesting is actually as you gain rank in the monastery, the highest rank before taking lifetime vows, they put you at the bottom, precisely kind of for this reason. So it was something called, like, you could call it seniority, where simple example, let's say someone donates a dessert or something. You pass it around to all the monks. It goes in order from seniority. So the guru gets it first, and the next senior monks takes it. Or it's a simple example, but everything was done in seniority level. Once you reach, after I've been there 7 years, you become the lowest person in that seniority before taking lifetime vows. So that's kind of like a built-in way there to keep that in check, so to speak.
Okay. And how many years are you at the bottom? You're at the bottom of that rank?
About 3.
3 years.
2? No, yeah, 3 years. 3 years. Yeah.
Okay. And so was there a period of time throughout this where you had very minimal people interaction?
Yes. So one of the disciplines that you take at the rank of a yogi, it's called, this is the rank before taking lifetime vows. You go on a 2-year retreat. So for 2 years, no internet, no newspapers, no news, no movies, no searching the web, no contact with family, we were already pretty secluded, but if your family came to visit, you could see them. If there was an area in the forest that you would go to call your parents if you wanted to, you couldn't call them in the monastery, but there was a section on the property that you could if you wanted to. We were very technologically savvy there. So, when you took vows, you got your MacBook and iPhone. So, you had the internet available to you. Of course, it shut off from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Before and after you had no access. It's only during the day. But so for 2 years, completely isolated. And even at night, the monks would get together and maybe on what we use the lunar calendar, but you can roughly say like our weekends, the monks would come together, maybe watch a movie or something. You didn't do that. You were by yourself. And then you had extra disciplines. So on top of that, you had to every day do a 3-hour vigil in the temple on top of all your other duties. So it's very, very intense time. So yes, during those 2 periods, and that during those 2 years, after going through maybe like 6-7 years of meditation, this was like a real strong push to where I experienced like a second type of pattern that I experienced when I first came in, when things came up inside of me. It's like at that point, at that stage, I needed something really strong to sort of jostle loose what was remaining inside of me to kind of purify and process. That was a very intense time.
Okay, so that was 2 years out of that. With what, you had one more year after that back in the monastery?
So after those 2 years, no, it was less than that, in less than a year. Then, so this is where leaving the monastery comes in. After I got off those 2 years, it's kind of like everything went cold. Like it was like a furnace was burning really, really, really hot. And then I got off those strong disciplines, that very sort of austere time, and everything cooled off. And
what do you mean by everything cooled off?
The emotional intensity to sorry, these concepts are very subjective, so it can be tough. I hope I'll
just keep asking questions.
Follow along.
Here we go.
But basically, when you're going through intense disciplines, you kind of have like a fire burning inside of you. There's a constant upheaval, a constant flow of things coming up. After that stopped. So it was like a giant. It's like you're out at sea with a giant storm, and then the storm's over and everything's calm. On the inside, with 2 years of every day, there was a giant storm. And then it all calmed down. There was no more storm. So everything cooled off. So I saw like a very long path into the future if I were to stay there versus leaving. If I were to stay there, it would have been like easy sailing, and not as much growth as I personally would like versus leaving. That's why I left.
Growth as in spiritual growth or something else?
Yes, correct. Spiritual growth.
Okay, so this is something that's often been on my mind. How much challenge do we actually need in our life in order to properly experience spiritual growth?
There's a balance and there's a personal preference. If you can, there's no rush. You can take as long as you want. You don't gotta do everything in this life. But I personally think that if you start like tasting the fruits of that, you'll kind of sort of consciously want to accelerate the process. But it's not needed. But it's really personal preference. There should be at least some. Otherwise, you just I mean, even if you didn't do anything at all, the way life is set up, you're going to spiritually grow. It's just, that's how it's set up. But that's like the slowest method. Let life kick you in the butt along the way. But yeah, it's definitely a balance. And that's why austere times were small periods of time. I didn't do too much fasting, but I know some monks did, certain types of fasting for, certain spiritual growth challenges. But it's something that was done in sort of moderation. Because if you do that too much, then like diminishing returns comes back through your effort. Through spiritual practices, if that makes sense.
If I try and feed that back, because there's a lot to unpack, but if I try and feed it back to you, you're saying that you'll only experience spiritual growth when you have those turbulent waters or the storms, right? When you have the things in life that are just causing you more and more angst, frustration, anger, annoyance, sadness, despair, things where life's just not turning out the way that you expect it to or the way you hope it to, and then you've got to do so much more to try and keep back on track, right? Where suddenly
I'd say yes, but with the caveat that you don't necessarily, you experience those because we offer resistance to that experience. It's not required, but that is the opportunity for you to grow spiritually. And the faster that happens, the less the experience we call grief and sadness, because you process it faster.
Okay, so where are these diminishing returns? Because it sounds like there were monks who would take fasts, for example, to even create more of this this experience, to more clearly identify what's going on in their mind. Like to create more grief or to bring up more emotions, to be able to experience it deeper, right? To be able to have a greater challenge in front of them. And then suddenly, because there's the challenge, there's a ladder or a wall which they've got to climb over. And so they're basically finding the walls which they've got to climb over in order to grow, right?
Yes. The way I like to look at it is very simply, imagine a stream. Okay. There's a bunch of logs in the way. All you got to do is take those logs out, and then the stream flows. So that's all you have to do. You don't have to create grief. There's just grief inside of you that's blocking the flow. So you just have to take an inventory and actually be able to see what's going on. And it's extremely difficult to see what's going on. That's why we have certain practices. All you got to do is remove those, and automatically the water flows. If you focus too much on taking the obstacles away and don't enjoy the water flowing, then your ability to take away the obstacles diminishes. That's what I mean about diminishing returns.
Okay, so this sounds synonymous with being in the real world or the non-spiritual world. We could argue they're one and the same, but we can put a pin in that one. But it sounds synonymous with the idea that if you want to grow in your career, for example, then there are lots of things which you're able to do. You can go down the path of doing more study, and you can take on more projects at work, and you can do more networking and find more opportunities. And instead of just like the formal ways of study, you can do some of the informal ways as well, and just trying to build up some of your skills. And you can find mentors for yourself, and you can really dive into the deep water all the time, right? Dive into the deep end and somehow prove that you're able to swim. And at some point, there's somewhere along that scale, there's only so much which you can take on before you start breaking down, before it just becomes too much. And then it actually hinders your ability to do what you were aiming for in the first time, right?
Correct.
like you still got to be able to get enough sleep, and you still got to be able to spend some time with friends and socialize, and you still got to make time to go and do exercise and look after yourself. So how do you find where that threshold is?
Experience. You poke at it with a stick, try it out. Yeah, just experience. Everyone's different, and it'll change. When I came into the monastery, I certainly didn't think I was so challenge hungry, but I ended up being so. So that's my nature. It's just experience, and being honest with what's going on. One thing we did in the monastery was a life review. So I had to write 10 pages for every year of my life of what happened. And then you burn it all in a fire. So you really go through and, turn up every stone that you can. And then every year you go through what happened in the year. So that really lends itself to, after you go through everything and, burn any emotional ties, to kind of have a bit more of an objective view of, where you were a year or two ago to where you are now, your progress, and, how you can adjust things, the answer to this question.
So there was something which you shared earlier on when you're talking about taking the logs out the stream, that part of how you know when you're doing it right is that you're also enjoying watching the stream go by.
Yes.
And how would you, as best as possible, like tangibly or as tangibly as possible, explain what that is or describe it?
The flowing of the stream?
Yeah. Or being able to identify what it is to watch or experience that flow of the stream.
Have you ever had a really, really good belly laugh where something was so hilarious, so funny that like your stomach hurt because you're laughing so much, and you felt that sort of lightness inside?
Yeah.
That lightness, the lighter you feel, the more that stream is flowing through you. For me, the sensation is lightness, that same sort of, and very like very light and fast, like and flowing. Those are words to sort of describe it. But also the joy you have in absolute mundane things. So one of the things I noted, I hated doing dishes. One of the most terrible things, I hated doing dishes. And one thing I noticed after I had like a string of good meditations was how much I enjoyed doing dishes. It was the warmth of the hands, like the soap, they're like bubbles, like they had cool little colors on them. Like it was so much more to the experience that I didn't see because my mind was blinding me to it, that I was genuinely enjoying just like the simple things. When that goes up, the stream is flowing. When your relationships with others are more harmonious, the stream is flowing. But me personally, I can just tell by how I feel inside.
That reminds me of a Thich Nhat Hanh quote, or a description at least, where he's describing that, are you washing the dishes to have clean dishes, or are you washing the dishes to wash the dishes? Implying that if you're washing the dishes just to have clean dishes, then you're constantly thinking about what you're going to do after you wash the dishes. You're going to have your cup of tea, or you're going to watch I don't think he referred to Netflix because it was written in the 70s, but you're just waiting to watch Netflix, or you're just waiting to go and check out social media or whatever it is. You just want to get it over and done with. You want to be finished, which means that you're never truly washing the dishes. And whenever you are washing the dishes, or whenever you're doing that particular task, you're never truly you. You're never truly in that moment and present. So you've just given me a clue as to why that frustration that you had or the conflict you had with your roommate about doing the dishes suddenly disappeared because you suddenly just started enjoying it, right?
There you go. And I wasn't blaming him that he didn't do it, because I didn't want to do it, and it was just all sorts of silly stuff. One other thing too that comes to mind is forgiveness. How holding grudges, like how far back do you go in your mind about something you're upset about? Is this something that happened 20 years ago? If so, you got cleaning up to do. It would shorten. So like someone, like a monk did something, said something that bothered me. The time that I would be upset diminished to where it's like anything that happened more than a day ago or two, it's completely forgiven and forgotten.
So that raises some really cool questions. This is more in my interest than the interest of the listeners, but hey, maybe people enjoy hearing this. Maybe I'll cut it out. Maybe they'll hear it. So my personal journey, which I've shared some of it before with you in the past, has been getting as proficient as possible about not being affected by those negative emotions. As soon as the negative emotions come up, identify them and just let them go as peacefully as possible. But in the beginning, that was about just changing it to something else. And I've noticed that for positive emotions which come up, it's just beautiful to experience them. They come up and you can stay with them, you can observe them, don't hold on to them, because as soon as you're holding on to them, it's just causing more pain in the future, right? But then we look at the negative emotions and negative experiences which come up. And I've noticed that I don't experience them so intensely. As in, when there are some really intense times to experience them, such as the passing of my first dog, of my puppy, or the passing away of my grandmother, who was one of the closest people in my life, who we named our daughter after as well. Like there's the loss of a friend, or at least the loss of a friendship. These are all things that have led to some pretty intense negative emotions. And when those intense negative emotions come up, then of course you've got, those are the times in your life, which I think you're referring to as those times of spiritual growth, where you've got no choice but to just sit down and confront them. Or you have a choice, but either you sit down and you confront them then and there, or you confront them later on. What are your thoughts about someone who has those intense feelings rather rarely? Have you ever found that there are people who do that and they're suppressing negative emotion and they're avoiding it? Or are they missing out on parts of life if they're not able to allow those negative emotions to kind of, like when they don't have as many of those episodes of just those negative emotions, just staring them in the face and saying, it's confrontation time?
Yes. Suppression is most popular thing to do, mainly because I think honestly that we don't have no education on it. We aren't taught this in school. There's what do you do when something like this comes up? If you if you don't have the tools, the understanding of what any of this is, suppression is just it's natural. Are they missing out on life? Yeah, I would say the richness of life, but I wouldn't say missing out on life. It's all part of it as well, but definitely the depth of it, and the richness and more experience for sure.
If it's how do you measure that depth, and how do you measure the value of it, or the importance of it, or how you're actually referencing it? So like if it's something which just takes, I don't know, 20 seconds to kind of come up, you observe it, and then it's gone. Like you're not pushing it away, you're not suppressing it, you're not trying to justify like, oh, that person looked at me funny, well, maybe they're having a bad day, maybe it's okay, and then you let it go. It's more like, that person looked at me funny, that's making me feel a little bit judged, a little bit vindicated. It's okay. Let it go. And like, if that process only takes 20 seconds, is it possible that there's an element of suppression in that moment? Or is it
No, I
likely that
mean,
that's just,
it can take a fraction of a second only, um, to even where your mind doesn't even have enough time to come up to any conclusion about what it is. The speed at which it processes now, um, it can be a fraction of a second.
so how's this turning out for you now in the real world, right? You've
So
come out
yeah,
you've come out the monastery and you come into the real world, and all of a sudden you I'm guessing it was much easier to see that you're the cause of your own suffering when you're in the
well,
monastery.
when you go into the monastery, you have to give up all your possessions. So when I left, I had no bank account, no possessions, no assets, no clothes. I just had the clothes that I have on me. I didn't have an underwear because we don't wear underwear with robes. So I got a plane ticket, $1,000, an iPhone, and the clothes on my back. And it was right when COVID hit, March 2020. First thing I did was paint some fences, do some yard work for some money. Then just slowly went up from there. But even when I was doing all that, I was enjoying the sun. I was enjoying my freedom. It happened really fast. I didn't think that I would get married, buy a house within a year, basically a year and a half. No, and I didn't try to do all that. It sort of just happened. It was definitely my desires, but it was just, that's the pace at which life offered it to me.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because I'm sure that you still have those negative experiences or those negative emotions which come up when a client takes too long to pay you, or when
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, you do some trading. So when the market moves the wrong way, or when
Mm-hmm.
your spouse presents themselves in an unfavorable way in an
Mm-hmm.
interaction, what happens? Where and does that still cause you any negative emotion, or
Oh
you?
yeah, but I'm fully open and honest with it, um, um, and I express it exactly how I'm feeling right now. Never hold on to it. One promise that me and my wife made to each other is, every day when we go to sleep, we have to be fully harmonious. If there's any disharmony between us, we talk it out, even if we have to stay up all night. We'll never go to bed, without love in our hearts for each other. Um, so, and I mean, suppression is basically not an option. It's like mechanically, I can't do it, because it's like taking a knife and trying to cut yourself. It's hurting yourself. So yeah, when something comes up, it comes more from a place of me creating it now instead of a sort of a past thing in the unconscious coming up. So I just voice exactly how I feel, and we're open and honest, so it all works out. And oftentimes those are like the times we laugh the most. So yeah, so how that looks now is, if something comes up, I share with you how I feel. That's it.
So you're referring to, like, you use some interesting terminology. You said growth is in my nature. Now, from a spiritual sense, how do you define your nature as being different to others? Or how do you define who you are? Easy question to answer, of course.
Well, if you mean from a context of, you're referring to like when I said how challenge hungry I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's more the spiritual blended with, more personality things. That's just how I am when the river flows through me. It's the source of joy for me.
This is something which we both connected as a result of personality, but this is something I've always been curious about, because I've always kind of identified the personality as a sense of self or ego, and at our core, we're all far more similar than we are different. Is it based on this analogy of the water flowing and the logs are the obstacles? Is it possible that you have this particular personality because you've still got some big logs which are stopping the other parts of it?
It's the river. It's the way the river flows. Everyone's river flows a little bit differently.
So can you expand on this? Because I'd love to hear more of it. Like, why do they flow differently? Why do we have different?
Oh rivers? God, I mean, why is there existence? I mean, like
you started that with oh God. So I don't know.
I mean, it's like I don't know. It's just how it is. Yeah, that's how someone's. I mean, when someone's opens themselves up to themselves, and the river flows in them. It flows differently. It could be possibly because when you remove the logs, it makes the water go a certain way. Because of the logs, could be. But yeah, as far as identity, the logs have nothing to do with it. You are the river 100%.
Okay. So how does that influence us? How does the river, or the difference in the river, influence our experience of life and our witnessing, our observing, and our connection with? Because if we're the river, we're part of a much bigger river network, I'd imagine. And all those rivers flow out to the stream, flow into larger rivers and into the ocean. Am I taking this metaphor too far?
No, that's pretty good actually. I really like that.
Okay, are you able to expand on that from your worldview, and especially in the context of now, not only having been exploring this concept as a monk, surrounded by monks in a monastery where everyone's attempting to let the river flow through them, and you can see different personalities in there as well. But now that you're in the so-called real world, and there are so many different personalities around, and so many more people you're interacting with, and with so many different challenges, and not everyone on the spiritual path, how does that analogy go further, and what do you really see?
To be honest, nothing really has changed since I left. After when I decided to leave, it was I felt like the walls of the monastery fell down, and that where there was real no difference between me staying or leaving. So really nothing has changed. Just different faces. More of a challenge for me, because at a certain point in the monastery, basic things like livingness. Also, the monastery at the time was very wealthy. Had like a $17 million endowment. Had nothing to worry about as far as livelihood and things. So that's more of a challenge, but nothing changed. I don't know what else to say. It's literally the same thing.
So what have you noticed, or what have you incorporated from what you've learned into your day-to-day interactions, both from a personality perspective, but then also a spiritual perspective, how they interact, and then how you choose to engage and interact with other people? How's that changed?
Well, first, I enjoy my interactions a lot, because it's more like, ooh, this is fun, because like this person, it's just really nice to see I enjoy like watching people, see where they are, interacting with them, and like knowing that uh, um, that if they remove some of their logs, their river flows, and it's interesting to see or even to speculate how the river would flow. Um, that's mainly, I would say, the difference, because in the monastery, everyone's a bit, more focused. Out in the world, they tend to let like the stories of their minds influence them more. But what was the question again?
How you incorporating that in terms of the way that you interact with others and how you engage with others?
Oh, I just don't do much. I just keep the space there for them. Like I know that if they're going, through something, that it's all going to be fine.
Yeah, okay.
Just hold the space, I guess. I mean, everything's going to be fine. Even though an image popped up from a movie. I don't know what movie it is, but I the scene flashed in my mind. It was like someone went to a temple, like a Buddhist temple, and he needed to get like this amazing weapon, but they had to test him before he got this amazing weapon, and he had one instruction: said, "Do not take out your weapon and use it." That was the instruction. And what happened around him, he thought it was real, but it was actually like the whoever was there creating an illusion for him, where like people were attacking his friends, attacking his family, about to hurt him. All these crazy things were about to attack him. It looked real to him, but it was actually an illusion created to him to see if he would take out his weapon or not. And if he didn't take out his weapon, then he would receive the grand weapon. So I kind of see it a lot like that, like all these things that causes so much hurt and suffering is just like pure mind imagination that we believe is real. And when we believe it's real, like it's real, but it's really not. So so I just kind of hold the space of it's really not, even though you can't impose anything on anyone. It's, everyone's through their journey. They're going to take their time to go through whatever they got to go through. I just find holding the space for it, saying everything's going to be okay, and just holding the space like allows the illusion not to have as much of a grip on you. But can't do anything to others.
Your story reminds me of, was it one of the Spider-Man movies? And it's like, no, Tony, I'm nothing without this suit. And Tony turned around and said, well, if you're nothing without the suit, then you don't deserve to wear it. Okay, cool. We're on the same page. Just from I know you've been watching some like Chinese martial arts movies. Cool. So you're effectively, it sounds like you're not really pursuing success per se. You're just pursuing rougher waters to continue growing from. Is that right?
Yes and no. I mean, I would say yes mainly. I mean, if I'm successful or not, it's not too bothersome to me. It's more the process. I want to be, but the greater prize to me is, the growth that I have to go through to achieve what I want to achieve. And if I don't achieve it, that means, I have to go through more growth than I could go through in the time allotted. But
okay, because like there are so many more challenges which would be presenting themselves. You don't have anyone else, for example, imposing routines and disciplines on you.
Correct.
Are you
But
imposing them on yourself?
yes, it lives within me. You can't take it away. Um, it, and that's what I learned in the monastery. I couldn't have done it without others and the monastery. Um, but after I did it for so long, then it kind of just lives within you because you see the benefit of it.
Hey, and what are those key benefits, and what does it start looking like in your life today?
Oh, just no problems. Um, actual achieving of things. Um, I mean, everything.
So
all the good stuff.
What's an example of a routine or discipline that you're applying in your life now?
Well, every morning, I meditate and have my morning routine similar to what was in the monastery, but basically all the time, 24/7. I'm sort of processing kind of what you would do in a meditation all the time. So not that question doesn't apply to me because I do have routines, but I'm almost kind of always meditating in the background, or like the processing mechanism that occurs during meditation is kind of always happening, just because of I did it for so long. Because when you're in the monastery, that's all you do. You don't got to worry about paying bills. You don't got to worry about making the food. You got to worry about anything. That's all you do. So it's really a mechanism that lives in me.
Or washing the dishes to wash the dishes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you start the morning, right? You start in the morning in terms of your eating and some of your tasks and meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And then what's the rest of your day like?
Then it's off to work.
Okay.
And then you come home to my wife, and then I spend an hour working on my business. And then after that, it's family time. So.
And what's next? Like, what's next for Jai?
Oh, so I want to create wealth, through business, but with that, I want to generate like a nonprofit sort of charitable organization that helps with basic needs around the planet. That's my goal. That's my objective physical success.
Okay.
To be able to do that.
So when you were saying that you want to be successful, or you're working towards success now, you actually used the term achievement. And if you don't achieve it, okay, you don't achieve it. That's a pity, but you don't achieve it. Is that how you feel? If you're not successful enough to build enough wealth for this non-for-profit, which will be able to help so many people around the world who have basic needs, how does that sit for you if you don't achieve it?
Well, if I don't achieve it, then there was something in me that was blocking it, because it's a true desire I have. So identify what that is and move that log out of the way so the river can flow.
Okay, so this one I can't resist asking is you use the term true desire. What's the difference between a true desire and a false desire or a normal desire?
Sure. So a false desire, you can say, is something that's created from suppression to try and fill that void. A true desire is a desire that comes through because of what you've opened up.
Okay, can you give some examples of that?
Sure. So let's just say I desire to go shopping and buy a bunch of stuff. Okay. So that's a false. I mean, it can be a true, but that's a false desire because you're trying to buy stuff to try and fill a void inside of you that doesn't feel so good. A true desire might be, I don't know, starting a solar company so that your neighborhood goes green or something. I don't know. It's probably more lofty, but it doesn't really matter what it is. But a true desire comes from a much deeper place, and you only know it after you remove some logs and the river flows. A false desire is pretending to enjoy the river flow, even though the logs are still there. And that's temporary. How long is it? You're only going to be happy for a couple hours or a day or two after you buy something. Then you got to buy something else to fill that void, or whatever it is. Could be smoking, could be an addiction. That's basically what addiction stems from. So those desires are false. True desire, and a true desire is something that like everyone involved benefits naturally. Purpose, soul calling, there's not much intention that happens. It kind of happens to you.
Okay.
You don't generate it here. You realize what it is after.
So there are a lot of people where possibly one of the best things they can do in their life to move forward from where they are, short of doing an hour of meditation every morning or becoming a monk for 10 years. Not everyone's willing to make that sacrifice, myself included, especially I've got a daughter. But most people can really benefit from surrounding themselves with the right people. And Tony Robbins says proximity is power. There are countless other incredible inspirational speakers and thought leaders who have shared very much the same thing. And there's a whole bunch of stats about how your income, for example, is primarily determined by the top 5 people that you spend time with. And when you're seeking people to spend time with, you want to understand that they're on a higher wavelength. Now, it might be easy to recognize when someone's on a higher wavelength to you. But if you want to surround yourself with people who are doing amazing things and connecting in the right way and can really be inspirational, how would you know if someone is setting up a solar company to help their neighborhood go green, so that their neighborhood can be green and so they can help save the planet, versus someone who's setting up a solar company which has the tagline of we're going to save the planet by getting our neighborhood to go green, but their real intent is to just make as much money as possible and charge as most as they can and be able to just kind of retire early and just do their own sort of things, right? They're trying to get the happiness from the stream that's currently flowing rather than going in and removing the logs. How do you identify that?
You might not be able to, because it's something in another person. But if you pay attention enough, you can kind of get a sense if you kind of know how someone's energy is flowing, so to speak. Once you've gotten a deep, intimate understanding of your own. Maybe intuition might be the right word. Does it matter to you? Like if another person? No, they have nothing to do with your life. But yourself, if you're the solar person, identifying, that should be pretty easy. You gotta be honest with yourself.
Yeah, interesting. And there's another phrase which you used during our conversation as well, which was with regards to, I think you said the depth of who you are. And what did you mean by that?
Well, there's a deeper part of you that's that's pure. And that's the area at which the river comes into you. You can bring your attention to that. And to be able to be there, you have to go through all the logs. You can't really be there by going around the logs. So you got to move them. You got to find the source of the river. Once you find the source of the river, that's what I mean about the depth of you, the area at where the river comes into you.
So given everything which you've learned and everything which you've experienced over the last, I don't know what, 30 odd years of your life, and especially the last 10 or the last 2 plus the 10 beforehand, what would you wish you could go back and tell your younger self?
Don't worry, it'll all be fine.
And if they don't listen, they're like, okay, all right. The older me as a hippie, I'm not gonna freaking become that. Let's just ignore it. How would you convince them?
It's futile trying. Don't like it. Like, trust me, like the way life is set up is totally perfect. Like you can't mess it up. I mean, you can mess up your life, but you know, in the grand scheme of things, you can't mess it up.
Yeah. Wow. Look, I think that's almost a perfect point to end it on. But if there are, and that's a beautiful message that you're giving to yourself and to everyone who's listening, is there any other message that you'd like to share with all the listeners from all your experience that you've gained and all the turmoil and the storms that you've sailed through?
Yeah, don't be so hard on yourself. You know, be friendly to yourself as much as you can, and like everything's fine. You can't mess it up. Just don't worry about it. Like just you're fine. Just you know, do what you love, do what you're interested in. And I'm not even sure how to describe it, but basically, like, don't be so hard on yourself is probably one of the things. I see a lot of, not sure what to call it, but a lot of like, even with a lot of coworkers, not sure what to call it, but like being hard on yourself, like just not being your own best friend, so to speak, through whatever's going on.
What if they feel like they've already stuffed it up and it just feels that it's irreparable and they're stuck with what they've already done?
Okay, well, terrible analogy, so I apologize in advance, but imagine you've been constipated for 5 years. Okay, and the person says, like, okay, you got to go, you know. It's got to happen. It may not be a pleasant experience to let all that go. It may stink, but you know, that's the way, and after you go through it, then it'll be so much better. And
you give new meaning to the phrase "lose your shit."
I don't know why that popped in my head, but terrible analogy, but it's a good analogy to kind of prove get the point across.
So wherever you are, whatever you've done, no matter how stuck you feel, no matter how restricted you feel,
correct,
no matter how much you feel that you've already made massive mistakes, and
yep,
no matter how old you think you are, or how terrible some of your relationships have become.
Yep, there's people on death row who've murdered people who've found connection. Yeah, it's always there, always.
Okay, so if I try and sum up the extent of the learnings which I can at least unprocessed at this stage, which I can sense from what you've shared, like you've gone on this incredible journey of being completely disconnected with that depth within you, who you are, right? The point where the river flows through you. And you were so disconnected from it because you had a whole dam worth of logs which are in the way. And to be able to truly experience life, or a much greater version of it, and a more fulfilling and a more successful experience, you needed to start removing those logs. And from what you've expressed, because you were so stuck, you were so buried underneath it, like you weren't able to even see that the logs were there. You needed this massive event, which was this epiphany of, holy crap, like all of that is just nonsense. Like, I'm fighting with my roommate because I'm refusing to do the dishes, and that's because I'm hating doing dishes, and there's no reason to hate it. I can just do the dishes. There you go. That problem's resolved, and I'm enjoying life now more. And you went on this whole spiritual path of being able to go through um, all these different stages of being a monk, and all these levels and all these responsibilities and all these different tasks, but with all this routine and discipline, which is completely contrary to your personality for sure, but just definitely contrary to the way you live life. And as you've gone through that journey, you've started to realize that anytime that we feel restricted, anytime that we have negative, like really negative emotions come up, it's just because ultimately we're allowing those logs to build up. We're getting in our own way. We're stopping ourselves from truly being able to experience the joy and the peace and the beauty and the love of the river which is flowing through us. And it sounds like what's really led you to success in this field, like success in this field of fulfillment, joy, just loving as much of life as possible, which is why people work so hard to get the job, is because they don't actually want the job. They don't want the property. They want to feel happier. They want to feel less restricted by that, so that they can spend better quality time with their spouse, or not be a cranky dad for their kids, or whatever it is, right? And the success for you is basically bypassing that I need the job or I need the property to I don't even need it, but I desire being able to feel this particular way. And when I'm feeling that particular way of like really feeling the joy of that river flowing through, not a temporary, yeah, I can go buy some nice stuff. Look how fancy I look. See, yeah, I'm happy. Hey, that person just liked my thing on social media, or that person just looked at me twice because of how amazing my sunglasses are, or whatever it is. And instead of trying to get that, you try and just experience a deeper, more beautiful version of life. And that's through the river flowing through you. And it sounds like you've only really achieved it, or you've only really been successful in this field because of a freaking huge amount of discipline, routine, determination, focus. It's like, how many people can honestly say that they've spent 10 years of their life to hone in one particular skill? And I don't know how many tens of thousands of hours you dedicated to that, because my math isn't that great, but that's a huge amount of your life to dedicate to it. And one of the key takeaways for me is that no matter where you are in your life, no matter what you're doing, and no matter what frustration you have, there's always a way around it. There's always a way to improve your situation in life, especially improve your experience of life, to allow life to happen for you instead of everything in life happening to you, by taking on this huge amount of dedication and focus in the right direction. Dedication and focus to clear the logs rather than to try and work your way around the logs, or try and smash it up into smaller bits, which just build up more logs, right? Is there anything you'd like to add to that summary?
Just one thing. The flow of the river, you can't describe it. It's not like nothing you've ever experienced before. I believe if anyone just flip a light switch, they could experience it, and then you turn it off, they would be dedicated the rest of their life to it, because it's indescribable. I don't even have any words. I want to emphasize the power of that, not just like, oh, I'm flowing with Thrive, the river, it's all good. It's like, it's seriously life-changing. Like the best, like imagine every desire being instantly fulfilled times a million, all just like pumping through you. It's so amazing. And you have access to that right now, just saying.
What would you say to anyone listening who wants to gain access to it? What are the next 3 steps they've got to do that will move them closer to experiencing it right now?
Well, everyone's at different stages. Everyone's different. Different practices work for different people, et cetera, et cetera. But it is a personal journey and it is subjective. So nobody can tell you that you're doing it right or wrong. Only you can really know that. And it becomes objective to yourself, but objectively it's subjective. You know what I mean? like you can't just put it out on the table and everyone agrees that yes, this is it. But like to yourself, it's like you know.
So if someone's listening and they choose to sit down for a meditation, and who knows, maybe they've allowed 2 hours for this and they've just turned off their phone, they've just done 2 hours. Now, there's a particular question they can ask themselves. Of course, there are going to be a whole lots of things that come up. My personal experience of that, for example, is I remember my stomach started growling, and then I was thinking, what am I going to eat? And I imagined going down into the kitchen, and there was going to be this wonderful food that I'd be able to eat, and I'd open the fridge door, and obviously there's not going to be any food there. And why isn't there food? Because I didn't remember to buy any. And obviously you didn't remember to buy anything because you're just an idiot. And see, you're an idiot. You're never going to be successful at anything. And then you bring yourself back to the couch and like, hang on, my stomach's just growled. What's going on? Where's this judgment coming from? But if there's a specific question that people are able to ask themselves, and they manage to practice enough that they're able to be present for long enough to truly answer the question, what's the question that they should ask? A front of mind. What's that mantra?
Who am I?
Who am I?
Or what am I? What is I? Once you go to that, you're at the source of the river.
And if someone took that really simply and said, well, I am name, I am Eric, I am Jennifer. And they're like, there you go, that's who I am. How would you challenge them?
If you're not that, then what are you? And just keep on asking yourself that. Anything that can be described, that your mind can conceptualize, your mind can put in a box, that you can label a name, is something that's not, it is so far beyond anything your mind can comprehend. It's the thing that's like the only thing your mind can comprehend. I don't have words to properly describe, but it's
yeah, I'm asking you literally to describe the indescribable, right? Literally just put the words to the one thing which you're saying is the way you find it is when you've got no words to describe it.
But you just keep on asking yourself. That's even a meditation. Keep on, whatever answer your mind comes up with, you're not that. And then what are you? You keep going deeper and deeper. It can take years, but yeah, that's the source of the good stuff.
Thank you, Jai. You shared so much value, and I don't believe my summary nor even your response to it was enough to truly justify the amount of experience that you've gone through and the amount of wisdom that you have to share. But I've found this incredibly helpful, and I'm very hopeful that it will be to many others who are listening in the future.
Yes. Yes, me as well.
Cool. Thank you, Jai.
You're welcome.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Success with Purpose, and I also hope that you feel capable to apply some of the perspectives and learnings from this episode in your own life. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to like and subscribe below. And until next time, live with purpose.